Well, hello. Welcome back to another Talks with Heavenly. I am Heavenly Lynn Acres. I will be your host. So, today we're going to be talking a little bit more about mediation, the process of mediation, but we're also going to be talking more about participation. So, what I mean by participation is, let's say somebody files a suit. Let's say somebody files divorce or custody for our visitation. So there would be this thing called basically custody, visitation, and paternity. And in some states, now in like the state that I live in the United States, if you're listening outside of the country, or if you're in a different state inside the United States, I live in Oklahoma. Now, in Oklahoma, if you are not married, you are considered what I call an assumption parent. And with this term, assumption parent, when you are married to somebody and the child is born, you are considered the legal biological parent. And this goes for somebody that is the father of the child. If you are unmarried, then you are considered an assumption father. And as a result, if you file for divorce, or well, not file for divorce, but if you file for custody visitation, you will also have to file for paternity. A paternity test is standard practice to make sure that the court adjudicates you as the legal biological father. Now, here's the thing. So, in most cases, and I will stress the importance of this, is that judges do not at all like having to make the difficult decisions for two grown adults. And if you don't want to be in the line of fire for that, in my best advice to you is to be as forthcoming, as generous, as communicative, as up forward and front as possible. And what I mean by that is if you are in the middle of a child custody battle, I'm sorry, that was my computer in the background. If you're in the middle of a child custody battle, it is in your best interest to be as communicative with the other parent. Now, and here's the thing. When you do this, it's going to be taken for granted that this is how you're going to be for the remaining time with your child until your child is considered 18 and is an adult at age. And so when you go to court, it is standard practice that mediation is necessary. You will have to set up time with a mediator with both you, your ex-spouse, or your ex-partner, and you guys will go to mediation. You guys will talk about what it is that you're wanting, and the mediator will write a report, and that report will go to the judge. And in most cases, the whole thing about it is that judges don't want to make decisions for adults. When adults, if you are old enough to make a child and raise a child, have a job, you should be able to make reasonable and conscious decisions on your own for the well-being of yourselves and your children. And for a judge to have to step in and do that for you, to some judges, is infuriating. They do not like having to do that. And so when you go to mediation, it's in everybody's, best interest to participate. And if you don't participate in mediation, then mediation fails. And the person that does do mediation and does participate in mediation, it favors that person. It shows that that person is participating. It shows that that person is interested in moving forward. That person is wanting to make sure that things are done properly by the system. And when you don't participate, it shows that you have very lack of respect for the court, the lack of respect for your ex, and it just doesn't look good. It just doesn't look good. And so in this situation, I recently had somebody comment on one of my podcasts on the comment section on YouTube, as well as I got an email from the website, which is heavenlyleanne.com. And the thing that I got which I'm not going to say names or bring up any type of detail because I want to keep everybody, their private information private. So this situation is a mom, single mom with two kids, and the father lives in a different state, and communication is inconsistent. The father is unwilling to go through with mediation. So my thought when I hear this and I'm reading this is that, I am so sorry that you are going through this. And I'm sure that, in some way, shape, or form, I can also understand how you may be feeling when you think about your children. I'm trying my best to make sure that my children have a proper relationship with their father, or in some other people's situations, are with even their mothers. And I understand. There's been times, I've looked at my child and I'm like, I'm so sorry that I can't make the other person see the error in their ways. And coming from that perspective, I can't necessarily understand what is so fearful about it or what would cause somebody to not want to go through the proper steps necessary to do that. And don't feel like, you know, because I know for a while, like I felt bad thinking to myself, like, did I do something or et cetera? And then I came to the realization that, I have no reason to feel bad for the other person because they're doing this to themselves. They're the one that's affecting their relationship with their children. They're the ones that are affecting themselves. And there's nothing you could do about that. Now, the other side about it is like, I do look at my child and I go, man, I wish I could change this. And I can't because I can't control somebody else's actions. So at the end of the day, you just have to, lead with, you know, affirming care, meaning like, hey, you're still loved, you're cared about, you are enough, you are important, because inherently children, when they feel like, if they're going to school, they're around their friends and their friends have two parents, children at some point come to this stage in their life. And if you're a person that, if you only grew up with one parent, you may in some way, shape, or form may feel like, was I never good enough? Did my other parent not love me? Did I do something wrong? And you just have to lead with affirming care. Let your children know, like, you are enough. You are loved. You are cared about. But you also have to remember at the end of the day that as the primary parent in that situation, you cannot allow yourself to talk negatively or bad about the other parent in front of your children because that is considered parental alienation. And you just don't, my best advice is just don't do that. If your children are asking about their other parent, I don't advise lying to your children and saying like, oh, the other parent is busy, they're working or they're sick or blah, blah, blah. I would just simply lead with the conscious decision to just simply say, hey, we'll talk about this at a different time. Or I understand that you have questions, you may have concerns, and I'm hearing them, but I really can't answer that right now. And, you know, in some ways, some people would just be like, well, that's, you're still hiding stuff from your children. But I would rather say that than lie to my child. And then when the day comes that my child does get to communicate with the other parent and they're asking questions, then that other parent's going to rebuttal what you had to say. And then it's going to break a line of trust between you and your child. And that in itself, you are literally driving a wedge between yourself and your child by trying not to tell them the truth. And so I'm pretty sure I know I've said it and I've tried to say it in so many different ways, but like, I'm sure that you kind of like grasp the concept of what I'm saying. However, when it comes down to participation for all parties involved, it's in the best interest of both parents to participate in court proceedings. If you're going to go to court, it's in your best interest for all parties to participate. Now, when it comes to people that don't want to participate, if you're a person that is participating and the other person is not, don't, don't, don't beat yourself up over it. It's not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong, because it is easy to do that. There comes a point in time where you have to understand that it is your job and your responsibility to look out for your children and yourself. It is not your responsibility to look out for yourself, your children, and the other person. The other person is an adult. They should be able to make conscious decisions that benefit themselves and their children. And if they are unable to, then it's not your responsibility to fix that. However, it is your responsibility to try to keep some type of a relationship between your children and the other parent. And what I like to call that is an open door policy. And an open door policy is basically like saying, hey, I'm going to send a text message saying, hey, if you just ever want to come over and see them, you're more than welcome to. This is my address. This is, when their school time is. This is when we have events. Hey, we're going to go out and go eat, on this day at this time at this location. If you would like to come, you're more than welcome to. It's good to keep an open line of communication. So that way they know that the door is always there. Even if they never open the door, that's perfectly fine. That's one way of showing to yourself, to your children, as well as to the court system, that you have always tried to bridge a relationship between your children and the other parent. And it definitely looks better on you, to the legal system, as well as to attorneys or anybody else, especially to your children whenever they get older. And what I mean by older is like an adult, to have that open conversation with them when they start asking the difficult questions about, hey, where's my other parent? Or why didn't this go the way that it should have? And that's just how it's, it is. But I will say, though, on the other hand, coming from the perspective of being a child with only one parent, I had a lot of questions for my mom growing up. And knowing that my dad was never, ever going to be in the picture, my mom pretty much told me about everything. And although I do remember as a child, it didn't really change my perspective. I did remember feeling very kind of resentful towards my father for not being in my life, mainly because of the fact that, he, from my mother's perspective, he wanted nothing to do with me. He didn't even sign my birth certificate. He came to the hospital, he saw me, and then left. But my mother did tell me that my father had some mental health issues, and he also felt like it was in his best interest not to be in my life and did not want to affect me. And this kind of comes back to, sometimes people have children and they're not ready. And it's not by saying like, oh, well, then why did you have children if you weren't ready? In some cases, it just happens. You can't just say like, oh, we're going to have a child and then suddenly change your mind and everything. In some cases, people do that. But there is some cases where they get with somebody, they have no intention of having children, and then bada bing, bada boom, all of a sudden there's a child, and that person's going like, hold the phone. It's been great, but I'm not ready to be a parent. And there's only one way that I can kind of look at this, and I kind of agree, but I don't agree. And in some cases, you have a person that's like, hey, I'm not ready to have children, and I don't want to affect my children's growth by being negative in their life when I'm not necessarily ready to be a parent. And in some people's perspective, that might sound inherently selfish. Is selfish, like, oh, you're choosing yourself over our child. And I want you to think about it from this perspective. It's kind of like you can drag a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. So if you force a parent or a person to be a parent, do you think that person's going to be a well-rounded parent if they're not ready to be? Do you think that that person is going to inherently be a positive influence on their children if they're not ready to be? That's something that I consider. And that's what brings us back to the open door policy. They may have a change of heart. They might mature in some way that they say, you know what? I'm ready to be a parent. But if you are that person that you have decided that, oh, well, you know, I'm not ready to be a parent, so I'm just not going to do it right now. And then suddenly you decide to come back, you need to be prepared that your children may not, and most likely will not inherently just connect to you the way that a child would be if you've been there since day one. So just be prepared that your child will not see you as a parent on day one. It will be difficult, but don't be discouraged. The more that you visit, the more that you communicate, the more that you show up for Christmas or any holidays or birthdays or maybe even Father's Day or Mother's Day, the relationship will get better. But then you also need to be prepared to answer some difficult questions. And eventually, you will have that parent and child bond that you decided that you were ready for. And it's important just to be patient. As somebody that had their child taken from them for 18 months and had to do supervised visits until my paternity test came back because I was not legally married to my son's parent, doing supervised visits with a child that does not know who you are or has an idea of who you are but was told negative things about you is not easy. To have a child that you saw born, you held, and you cried over, you fondled over because you loved them so much, reject you in the most harshest of way is the most gut-wrenching and most heartbreaking experience. But I stayed diligent. I stayed patient. I stayed with an open heart. And now I have the relationship that I've wanted and deserved to have with my child. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Now, is it always going to be rainbows? No. Raising a child is fun. It is rewarding, but don't expect the rewards just to happen every single day. So, but at the end of the day, when you sit back and you think to yourself, oh my gosh, I'm going to see this child walk across the stage and get their diploma one day. I'm going to watch this child maybe get married one day. I'm going to watch, maybe I'm going to have grandchildren one day, or maybe this, maybe that. Those are the things that I thought about, which was I'm going to see this child grow up and bring an impact into people's lives. So if you are a person that is sitting out there right now and you have chosen that I am not ready to be a parent, and then you have chosen that you want to be, I applaud you, but just be patient. And if you're a person out there that is raising children by yourself, I completely understand. It's not an easy feat. And my best advice to you is always keep an open door policy. Now, if the circumstance is different where you don't want to keep an open door policy because the person is inherently toxic or abusive, well, I understand that too. I completely understand that as well. But this concludes our podcast for today. If you have any questions or concerns, or if there's anything that you would like to talk about, if you would like to reach out to me and tell me your personal story, you are welcome to. If you have any questions or if you want any advice, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. You can comment in the comment section on YouTube, or you can email me through my website at heavenlyland.com. Other than that, I will be talking to you in the next episode.